Welcome to Natchez, and welcome to Natchez School Board.
Thank you.
You have a report.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Elson. I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity to come over tonight. I appreciate the chance to come over and meet with you and talk about education. That's something that I've been doing for the last 30 years or so. And so obviously I enjoy it and I like doing it and hope to keep doing it. I currently serve as the superintendent of schools in Tensas Parish, which is the smallest public school system in the state of Louisiana. We had the lowest teacher salary schedule. We had the highest percentage of uncertified teachers in the state. Yet since I've been there, we've moved from a D-rated district to a C-rated district. And I hope that we can continue to make strides. I have been a central office administrator, either as a superintendent or as the number 2 person in the school district since 2006. And I've been an overall school administrator since 1998 as assistant principal, supervisor, and superintendent. So I have a lot of experience in a lot of different roles, a lot of different projects over the years. I'm a father of 2 children. My daughter Grayson's going to start OT student at LSU Shreveport in May, and my son is a student at McNeese in Lake Charles. I'm a graduate of David High School, which is a public high school in the state of Louisiana, as are both of my children, and I'm a strong advocate for public schools throughout the entire state, regardless of where they are located. We spent time today in Baton Rouge talking about rural school districts. If you went to LSBA this past week, you know that was a strong topic of conversations, and I've been involved in those conversations since the beginning with John White, since our district is a small. We've been very lucky though, because of cuts and consolidations, not to run any large deficits, even though some of my fellow superintendents have had to do that in Northeast Louisiana. I'm here tonight because I'm very fascinated about the idea of Natchez Parish, about the opportunity to live in a college town, in a bigger school district with more opportunities, with more students, more teachers, more money, more financial resources to do things, a larger business community to work with. In Tensas Parish, for instance, we had no Sonic, we had no Pizza Hut, we had no McDonald's, we had no Walmart. The district is a rural district, and if you go to Walmart, you're driving 40 minutes in one direction or the other. So the opportunity to move to a bigger area like Natchez, which would be close to my daughter who will be in Shreveport soon, and the opportunity to get back to the larger district with more resources and more staff is something that really appeals to me. I'm glad to be here and look forward to going through the questions with all of you.
Thank you. And I know you have it in your literature, but how many students you have in your
So in Tensas, we have 403.
403, yes.
And so it's happened over the last, I've been in Tensas since 2016. In 1998, Tensas Parish had 6 schools and over 1,000 students. And the parish at that time had over 20,000 people. Currently, Tensas Parish has a population of around 4,000. And so the public school system has around 400. And there's a private school down the road that has about 150. So then you have a handful of kids that go out of parish and charter schools. So if you add all those kids together, you still be roughly at about 600 kids within the parish.
What happened for the population increase?
Well, it's a rural district. There is no industry. They used to have a small lumber mill in the parish years and years ago. That closed, and so there's no other industry to speak of in the parish. We're the largest employer in the parish, and so you know I'm the largest employer. The sheriff is the second largest employer, for instance, in the sheriff in the parish. And it's the same thing when I was in Concordia Parish. We were the largest employer. We had over 600 employees. The sheriff and the detention centers had over 300. The city of Vidalia had almost 300.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Eugene?
Okay, my question is philosophy on discipline and mind.
Well, you know, I believe that expectations should be clearly set and defined, and that includes any type of discipline regarding behavior in the classroom, behavior on the school bus, what time you get to school. All of those things need to be very firmly established, and they need to be very consistent when they deal with folks when they do have violations. Unfortunately, school personnel spend a good bit of each day with discipline matters, everything from getting kids to school and getting them on the bus to try to solve little squabbles that they have amongst themselves. And unfortunately, for the last 4 or 5 years, we spent more and more time dealing with problems that are brought about because of social media problems. You know, it's very easy for people 30 miles away to send nasty comments to one another through Snapchat and other things like that. And oftentimes, these people do not have vehicles, but we give them a ride to school every day. And so when they get to school, then they try to solve some of those problems. And so, you know, we have to be very consistent in our expectations about what we expect kids to do and what our consequences will be when they break those rules. And that's the only way that you can have an orally teaching and learning environment is if you have this kind of skill set.
Okay. Any follow-up? Dr. Nelson, we will be taking notes.
Okay.
And so we won't make eye contact and let us apologize for that.
I'm sorry.
Ma'am?
Excuse me, I have a follow-up.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on suspension?
I think that if you have a good in-school suspension program, that should be your first line of looking at that. But in order for in-school suspension to work, it has to be something that students do not like and students do not enjoy. Because if it's not punitive in nature and it's not something that they dislike, then there's no consequence, and it has to be a consequence for children. But I think any time that you can keep kids involved in teaching and learning, whether that be in-school suspension or an alternative program, that's what you should do before you turn kids loose to the streets or turn them to their homes, because in many cases, it's a vacation for students, and there are no parents at home to keep them from running up and down the road or keep them off of Facebook or video games and so forth throughout the school.
So you said that it must have some type of punitive value.
If you're going to be disciplined, it's just like when we drive here, when we leave here this evening, if we get a speed ticket, we're going to pay a fine. And because of that punitive amount of that fine, then we're going to slow down, or we're going to make changes to our driving habits. And so I think it's the same thing in school. You need to have clearly established rules and consequences when you break things. And I think if you're going to put students in in-school suspension, that needs to be something that they do not enjoy doing, because if it does, then there's no deterrent.
In school.
It is.
Oh,
Yes.
And so you're willing to have something in place to deal with extenuating circumstances, because sometimes you have to deal with the ongoing problems that some children are encountering that's no fault of their own.
Yeah, I think ideally in the perfect world, we would have more social workers, we'd have more school psychologists available, because a lot of kids are going through trauma. And I try to tell the staff is that you don't know what it took for that kid to get here today. They leave your house or mine, they may have left the house with no water, no breakfast. The mom and dad may have not been seen for a couple of days, and maybe living with an elderly grandmother who has health issues and can barely get around on her own. So there's a lot of challenges kids face, and so we have to take those things into account when we make decisions about children.
Thank you.
Additional follow-up questions? Tom?
What are your thoughts on having visual, performing arts, and music in our schools? How would you allocate or find funding for these programs?
I think that those things are great. I think most research will show you that kids are better test takers and they're happier students, so they're able to perform in these types of programs. You know, being in Natchitoches, I would think that you'd be in a position, because of close proximity to Shreveport and also because of Northwestern being here, that you would have some opportunities to have these programs that other people like myself do not. You know, when you go out to the rural parts of the state, you're going to find very few of these things, partly because the staff themselves are very difficult to find. It's very hard to find people that have the skill sets that we're talking about here to be successful in doing these programs. Not to mention the financial cost. You know, unfortunately, what's happened in Louisiana for the last 10 or 15 years is that we've made everything about testing. You know, everybody's about testing, ACT scores, EOC scores, and so forth and so on. And we're forgetting the fact that part of what we're supposed to be doing is creating human beings and citizens, and well-roundedness is a benefit in that regard. So people that know some things about art and know some things about music, I think that's the things that we need to do. Because for some kids that were able to participate in the band, for instance, that's the best part of their day. That's going to be the most important thing in their lives every day when they come to school. They're coming to school because they can play the saxophone, they can play the drums, or whatever that case may be. And the same thing with painting. Both of my kids were gifted and talented, so they did a lot of drawing and painting. That was some of the best times of their school day. They enjoyed doing those things. And so if we can have happier kids, we can have fewer discipline problems and better test scores. And at the end of the day, better human beings, I feel.
Okay, any follow-up for Dr. Nelson?
Dr. Nelson, what experience do you have in budgets? And in a deficit year, what would be your analysis to rectify the situation?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I've had a lot of experience with it. You know, one of the things that most school districts face, especially these days, when we look at, and my staff used to say, if they would take my hands behind my back, I couldn't talk, so please forgive that. But, you know, one thing that we have in Louisiana, we talked about this earlier today, the meeting I was at, is that, you know, for the most part, the MFP funding has been frozen for about 10 years, which means that we're still using, you know, dollar amounts that if we would have gotten the 2.75% that we were entitled to, in my opinion, most of us would have, even in my small district, $400,000 or $500,000 more a year. In a district this size, you probably would have $3 million more a year to do things with. So, you know, unfortunately, what that means is that we haven't gotten that money, but by the same token, we've had increases in OGB, or healthcare costs for employees. We've had increases in costs for every type of insurance you can think about, including today, I was looking at quotes for cybersecurity insurance, which is a new thing that we need to have now. So unfortunately, all of those costs are going up. The cost of school buses are going up. The cost of tires are going up. And so, you know, you have to look at your budgets and try to make decisions about what you can and cannot afford, or where you can make cuts and where you can save money at. But the thing in school districts, for the most part, is that 85 to 90% of our budgets are spent on people, on salary and benefit related costs. And so when you get into financial difficulties, you either have to do one or two things. You have to find a way to raise revenue by increasing taxes generally, which most people don't want to do, or you have to cut staff. Now, I've always been one to try to cut staff through attrition, meaning people who retire on their own, or they resign on their own to move to other places, and then you try to shuffle staff around by transferring staff so that you don't have to lay anybody off per se. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I've been involved with passing taxes. I just passed a tax in Tensas Parish in November for a 15-year property tax renewal. I wish my millage in Tensas Parish was what your mill is worth here. My mill in Tensas Parish is worth $55,000. Your mill here, I'm sure, is worth over $300,000. So, you know, when you get into budget problems, you have to have conversations with the board, with community people, and say, okay, guys, these are what we're facing. If we could go out and raise a 5 mil tax, we could raise X. And we could pay for this band program or this talented art program, whatever. What kind of community support can we get to do that? And a lot of times, people at the chamber or at Rotary or the Lions Club, these types of groups, they can give you a vibe and say, look, Paul, there's no way it's going to work. I can tell you. The sheriff tried to pass a tax last year, he got voted down 2-1, those kind of things. So you have to get a vibe. And if you can't go the revenue side, you need to look at cutting staff. And that's something that nobody wants to do. And eventually, you have to go to the point where you have to consolidate schools if you get to a dire strait. I had to close a school in Tensas Parish in the last 2 years. But that's always the last resort.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am.
How will you advise the board of all situations and issues that pertain to the schools, students, and facilities in a timely manner?
What I do is I send out what I call an FYI, and I send it out every week. We send it out through the U.S. Postal Service because some of my board members in Tensas did not have email. But if we had, all of them had email, we'd send that out email. And of course, email would be a quick way to let you know about other things. In the event that we have some other kind of incident that comes up, then usually it's my secretary or I will call or text board members to say, you know, there was a bus fender bender near so-and-so, there was nobody hurt, I just want you to know, if you hear something later today about a bus wreck, that there was in fact one, but nobody was hurt, that kind of thing. So we would try to immediately reach out and call or text people to say, hey, this is what's going on. But more, I guess you'd say more normal news would come out on a weekly basis about what's going on in the district, what kind of challenges we may be facing because of this report that's coming in, or if we're in the middle of a building project, for instance, some sort of update on that, those kind of things will go out on a weekly basis.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, Dr. Nelson? Dr. Nelson, based on your knowledge, what do you perceive are the top 3 issues in our parish, and what is your plan to address them?
Well, I think just looking over some of the things that I've been able to sort of look at online, I think the first challenge is going to be dealing with academic issues. When you look at your academic index, which is your EOC and your leap and ILEAP scores, Natchez Parish currently is a big area. So I think that's one of the first things that you have to attack is some academic changes. See what you're doing now, make some decisions about trying to improve that. Maybe that means software curriculum changes, maybe that means shuffling staff around, maybe that means training for staff. It's hard to say without knowing all the particulars, but those are some of the things that come to mind. The second thing to me is that, you know, you're a C district, you should be a C district. So that means you need to look at some of the other factors that are out there as well to move up to a B district, to get away from being a C. And the third thing, from just looking at the academic, because I really don't know anything about the financial situation, is ACT. Your ACT score currently is lower than the state average, and we know that ACT is very important for all students going to college. You know, our goal needs to be that every kid makes a 20 on their ACT because that's what it takes to become top eligible. And we need every kid top eligible that's headed in that direction. And then, of course, for kids that are headed to Jumpstart direction, that's something that we need to look at too, to try to keep programs up and out there that are appealing to students and to parents. And that's, I guess that's 4, so 3, but that's something when you look at students exiting the program.
So you mentioned academic issues. So what is some indicators that you would look at and you would initially try to correct?
Well, the first thing that I want to do is I would want to see what curriculum packages we're using now. And the State Department of Education has what's known as Tier 1 curriculum packages. And I would first want to see, do we have those in place at ELA and math? And so, you know, if we don't, then that needs to be the first thing that you attack. And if you do have those programs in place, what kind of training historically have we provided for those people that are using those programs? Because let's just say we do have a Tier 1 curriculum. So we have ZERN, which is a K-5 Tier 1 curriculum product out there. But we haven't had staff development on that in a year and a half. Well, staff is constantly changing. Everyone needs refreshers on materials that they do. Those are the types of things that you'd be looking at to try to circle back to the path.
Thank you. Any follow-up with that?
If you saw the need to change the curriculum, would you be willing to address that?
Yes, ma'am, because since I've been in Tensall Parish, we have done that. We went to ZERN for K-5 math, we went to Agile Minds for 6 to 12 math. And we've done those things through a variety of grant programs. And then on the ELA side, we've gone to American Reading Company core program for K-2. And then we've gone to Frog Street for pre-K. And all of those things I've done with Circle Money. I've gotten about $1 million in Circle Money, which is Scribing Readers grant that we paid for those things, not only with the materials, but also for training and instructional coaching from outside vendors.
And what about additional training for the teachers? because this parish being such a large minority, population in most of all the schools, what about, are you a proponent of, diversity, cultural diversity training?
Oh, yes, ma'am. We use Safe Schools. I'm not sure if you've got familiar with Safe Schools. Safe Schools is an online learning platform. And in Safe Schools, you can assign staff, depending on their job description, a variety of things. Diversity training is one of the things that we assign to all our people. And it's just like the requirements that you have legislatively about suicide training and bullying and first aid and all those things, that we as a district have that as our list.
Thank you.
Ms. Phelps?
I have a quick follow-up question first. Do y'all have textbooks in Central Parish? I'm just curious.
We do. So what happens in Zern and Agile Minds, we basically print those materials. We buy those through a printer every year. So they're recyclable or consumable materials. Now in K2 reading, we do. We have reading books, we have novels, just like you would think about. You go into a room and things are color-coded based on the reading level for the classroom. And then when you get to 3 to 12, we're in guidebooks. In guidebooks, you're basically using novels as the main source. So you may be reading Tom Sawyer in 3rd grade, you might be reading Huckleberry Finn in 6th, and you might be reading the Gifford in 7, and so forth. That's the way that guidebooks are structured. So then you have those novels. So, and generally those are paperback. So the bad thing about that is then you're in a situation where every couple of years you have to recycle those. You have to replace those. But that's part of the game.
Can I ask a question? Just Dr. Nelson, do you see a avenue to increase dual enrollment here?
I do, because, to me, from the outside, you ought to be married to Northwestern. Northwestern is here. You've got an advantage that 50 other school districts around the state do not have, and that is that you've got a regular 4-year university in your backyard. So, yes, sir, I believe there needs to be a lot of dual enrollment. When I was in Concordia, we had a lot. In Texas, we don't have quite as much because our ACT scores are lagging behind. We're working on that to get kids eligible to go. But we do have about a quarter of our senior class who are in dual enrollment with a technical college in Toledo. So those kids go, that's dual enrollment too. It's a jumpstart kid. You're in dual enrollment as well because you are getting community college credit for welding or for CNA and those programs. But yes, I'm a big believer in that. My personal children, my son is in his 2nd year at McNeese, but he was a junior in December because of dual enrollment in AP. I believe AP is a great thing. I believe CLEP tests are a great thing. And I think in a bigger high school like you have in Natchez Central, you ought to be able to offer a variety of AP courses. Now, AP courses are very difficult. The test is very difficult. But the rigor that's there will help those students when they do move to Northwestern or Tech or Grambling and so forth. And that's one of the things that we need to look at. We don't want to just put out people that go to college. We want to put out people who will graduate college and then hopefully come back in active spirit.
Okay, my real question.
Okay.
What steps would you take to evaluate the current leadership positions within the central office? And please provide a time when you had to repurpose an employee to move to a more productive position.
Well, I think the first thing that I would do, and I had some of those notes in the little 90-day plan that I had provided, or I gave you this page to hand out, is, the first thing for me as an outsider would be to try to come in and understand what everyone does. What do you do every day? How do you interact with the school leadership? Because central office staff, their role should be to support schools and school principals. That's what their role should be. And so, what kind of interactions do we have going on there and how we support them? And then, are we providing correct information, or we provide up-to-date information to schools? Sometimes you get in situations where supervisors or other people provide inaccurate information to schools. And that's one of the things that you kind of look for to make sure that the information is the most current information and is accurate. But part of the thing for a central office supervisor is is that you have to have the personality to work with all of your different principals. You know, because if you've got 10 or 11 principals, every principal's got a different personality. And part of your challenge as a supervisor or as a superintendent is to be able to sort of mold yourself to each different one for each different scenario in order to provide that school with things that they need. Now, what I've had to do in the past is I've had to kind of move people around because of their background. For instance, if somebody was a more secondary oriented person, they don't need to be an elementary supervisor or working with pre-K. Because if they haven't been crawling around the floor with a pre-K student and they've been a high school teacher their whole career, it's going to be very difficult for them to relate to that teacher that's doing pre-K. So those are the types of things I think you look at first. Because you're always trying to mesh personalities too. You're always trying to mesh personalities.
Any follow-up? Okay. Mr. McGuire.
What experience you have with transportation program, and how do you manage a contract system?
Well, it's funny that you bring this up, because in Concordia Parish, we had Durham School Services. Durham School Services was our bus. And originally, when Dr. Laster was our superintendent when they first came, and I was certified number 2 before she left, and we had a lot of local political problems with contract drivers when Durham came in. Because what we did was we sort of decided to have a hybrid system originally, in which we had some contract drivers, we had some Concordia Parish School Board drivers that drove Durham buses, and then we had total Durham routes. And so there was constant tension between those. Now, when I left Concordia, we were only down to 2 contract drivers, and we had, I think, 32 Durham routes at that point, because those contract drivers had retired as they got to that point, and when their current buses aged out, because you know you can't drive a bus past the 25th birthday on route, when they would get there, they simply would either retire or petition us to drive a Durham bus but still be one of our employees. So I've had some experience with that. Now, one of the things that is important is that you have communication with the staff that's running that. So in Durham's case, they also ran buses for the Natchez Public School System, and they also ran for us. So they had one person who was over both areas, and then we had a day-to-day type person. That person can make or break your program, because they oftentimes will be the one who gets calls for parents or principals wanting to know where the bus is, why didn't the bus pick up so-and-so, that kind of thing. It's all about communication and working together. But yes, sir, I've had several years worth of that experience back and forth. And as long as, you know, everyone sort of understands their role and what the expectations are, I think it works well. But initially, contract drivers are going to be very reluctant, because they think that somebody's pushing them out. And, you know, more and more districts are looking at that. Because you save benefit costs a lot of times by doing that. Not to mention, you don't have to go out and maintain your own fleet, or have your bus born, or mechanics, and those other types of things you have in your country.
Okay, any follow-up? Great. Reverend Harris?
Dr. Nelson, how will you ensure equitable opportunities grounded in support, tools, resources, and time to learn despite race, zip codes, or family background?
Well, I think there's a difference between equity and equality. And it's funny, because I saw a little cartoon the other day, and it showed 3 people watching a ball game behind the fence. Did you see?
Yes, sir.
All right, and they had 3 boxes. And they had, the tall guy was standing on a box, the medium-sized guy was standing on the box, and the little bitty kid was standing on a box too. The problem was, the little bitty kid standing on the box could not see over the fence, whereas the other 2 could. So the answer is that the equitable thing to do was for the big guy to get his box to the smallest guy, 2.5 feet to the oldest. So, you know, sometimes when you look at schools, for instance, some schools are gonna have special needs because of the group of students they serve. Maybe they have more ELL kids, maybe they have more special ed students, maybe they have more challenges with early childhood and trying to get kids on track to read by grade 3 and those things. And you just have to make decisions. I mean, your goal should be to try to get every kid reading by the end of the 3rd grade. Every child. Black, white, purple, and green, anywhere in between. So if that means that you have to spend more resources at school A compared to school B to make that happen, then that's what you need to do. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any follow-up? Ms. Broadway?
Yes, please explain your description of an instructional leader and provide specific examples of how you have demonstrated this quality with faculty and staff.
The most obvious thing that jumps out to me is the accountability system. You know, unfortunately, the accountability system we have in Louisiana is a punitive system by nature. And what I find is that a lot of teachers and even a lot of principals don't fully understand the way that accountability system works and how they play a role in it, how their individual class plays a role in it, how even individual children play a role in it. So what I think of as an instructional leader is the first thing they do is explain that system to everyone and then try to give them the tools to beat the system, if that's a good word. In other words, how are you successful within this system? So that's tier 1 curriculum, and that's some more training for teachers or whatever. But I think the first thing is to make sure everyone understands the rules that we're going to live and die by. Because at the end of the day, the news media is going to be looking at us and saying, why are you an A, or why are you a B, or why are you a C, or why are you whatever? And we need to be in a position that we know and understand why we are what we are. Where are our weaknesses, where are our strengths? And I think the instructional leader is going to be a person who's in a position to say, this is what we're doing well, this is what we're working on trying to get better, and these things we are terrible at right now. So you have to be able to do that. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to spend a lot of time doing your homework. You can't fly by the seat of your pants when you make some decisions.
Thank you.
Board members, any follow-up? Ms. Willis?
Good evening. How do you plan to introduce yourself to the community and our local businesses and our staff?
Well, I think one of the first things that I like to do, of course, is to get to know who all is here, have a meeting with the principals, and take a trip to each school and meet staff, teachers, parents, janitors, the whole group, meet each one of those folks. And then after that, try to set up a series of meetings with local leaders, sheriff's department, police chiefs, mayor, police jury, or parish council people. And then I think I'd like to try to have meetings with the Chamber of Commerce and Lions Club and Rotary Club and stuff like that, make appointments or plan to attend their meetings and get involved with some of those organizations like that. And then I'd like to have meetings at each school at some point with teachers by themselves. Tell me what's good about ABC Elementary. What's bad? What can we do better? What can we do from this office to help you get more successful? And I like to do that without the principal there, without the supervisor there, without a secretary taking notes, and see what they say. The other thing that I like to do, or think would be a good thing, is to meet with students, especially high school kids, because they'll tell you. Sometimes you're not going to like what they tell you, but they will tell you things that you need to know. And since I did this in Concordia, I have what I call the Superintendent's Advisory Council. At Tensaw High, since we're so small now, I go over and meet with the student council there about every 6 weeks. And so one of the things that's come out, for instance, in the last several months was the opportunity to have a 13th grade in which students could stay in your system. They would still count on your MFP, and you could send them to the VOTEC if that was the deal that you worked out. And you could pay their tuition, and they could come to school, they could ride the bus, you could still feed them lunch and all those types of things. So my secondary person and I talked about it, and said, I think this is a good thing. I called the community college up the road, Tallulah. I asked them about this, and no, they hadn't heard about it, but they thought they could do it. He was gonna talk with his welding instructor, and the CNA person, so forth and so on. I said, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the school, and I'm gonna see what they think about it. So I go meet with the student council, and the kids said, Dr. Nelson, you're crazy. Ain't nobody gonna do that. Nobody's hanging around here. When they get graduated, they're gone. So you might as well forget that. Don't waste your time. That's what the kids said. So needless to say, I didn't pursue it anymore. Because if that's what the leaders of the school, who know their friends and know their classmates and know their relatives, and that's their vibe, there's no sense in me beating my head up against the wall and trying to get kids in. So but getting out and communicating, visiting schools, a lot of times I find out more at the bus stop than I do in meetings at the Flavorville about what's going on in school.
I have a follow-up question as well. What about parents? Would you be willing to be as accessible to parents? Would you offer an open door policy? Could our students' parents be able to have access to you? Could they come speak to you?
Yeah, I have parents that come see me on a regular basis now. And it's everything from dual enrollment, because I had some parents want their daughters, there's 2 moms with 2 daughters. And I've had some come see me about discipline-related issues because of Snapchat and so forth. So, if I were going to be here, which I hope to be, one of the things that I would try to do is I would try to go to every school, and when they have their open houses or reading night and so forth, be there to meet those parents and those events. And that would be sort of an introductory type kickoff thing, and then we could roll from there.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Me too.
Man, go ahead.
Have you ever made home visits?
I have brought children home over the years, but I haven't done it any time lately. I brought kids home whose parents would ask me because they didn't have a way to get them home. I brought kids home because they had lights and the parent didn't have a car. So I have done some of that over the years. Now, I don't do that by myself. I always have somebody with me because these days, unfortunately, that just seems to be best practice.
My question was, would you be, because there's some other local organizations in the minority community, both Mississippi churches, Ministerial Alliance, you have to go to those meetings to get input from what the minority community is interested in, their concerns and all that.
Sure.
Would you be willing to maintain a relationship?
I had a relationship when I was in Concordia with Ministerial Alliance there. And because they're going to be the group that helps you get the message out a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they're also going to be the group that helps break some misconceptions about what's happening or not happening in the school. And so communication and knowledge will help things run a whole lot smoother. So, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryan.
Final question. How do you plan to monitor leading critical indicators to support all children performing at grade level or above? And how would you communicate this information to the staff?
Well, one of the things is I don't know exactly how you're doing that now. But one of the things that we do is that we use an educational product in which we test students at the beginning of the school year. We test them in January, and we test them again, usually around the 1st of May, late April, depending on when state tests are falling. And we use that information to share with teachers to say, you've got 22% of your kids who are functioning where they need to be right now. You've got 15% that are above, and you've got 50% below. What can we change? What can we do? What do we need to do more of to get that 50% over here in this green or yellow group versus this red group? So I'm not sure what you guys do in that regard now. I think that's money well spent. We use title money to do that and early intervening dollars through IDEA to do that now. But I think that's a very worthwhile use of money. It gives everybody an idea about where kids are starting from, how kids are performing.
Okay. Dr. Nelson, that concludes our questions. And we're at the point where we are waiting on your closing remarks.
Well, all I would like to say for a couple minutes is that, you know, I don't have all the answers. I don't know it all. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a magic stick. I don't have any magic beans in my pocket. But what I do have is a strong desire to succeed. I have a lot of background knowledge, a lot of experience that I can bring to bear, ability to listen, ability to communicate with folks, and the dedication to work hard to make things happen. And so if I'm given the opportunity to come to Natchez Parish, you will not have a greater advocate for or defender of the students of this parish or the school system as a whole. And I thank all of you for having me here.
We appreciate your time.